Abibi Fahudie and blessings to the ancestors. It's D1 here with a new video here to discuss the historical invasions of Africa by foreign powers and how it led to the current fragmented neo-colonial landscape of the motherland, and to exemplify the dangers of non-unity amongst African people by using several historical examples dating back to the ancient period and to the modern times. Before we get started with today's video, I would like you all to subscribe to the original People's Party's mailing list as part of our efforts to build a core support base for our Pan-African development work as we continue to grow. The link is in the description and in the pinned comments to join. In addition, if you're a fan of boom bap beats, feel free to stream my music, available on all major streaming platforms, and add your favorites to your favorite playlist as well. Thank you, and let's get started with today's video. We will start in Africa's ancient period, namely ancient Kemet, or known as modern-day Egypt, and its surrounding Nile Valley kingdoms in the northeastern region of Africa. Kemet is known not only as Africa's oldest civilization, but the first organized civilization in human history, with its origins tracing back to 4500 BC, and enjoyed several thousand years of dynasties that was built around the Nile valleys. Over time, there were numerous external and internal conflicts that led to the gradual decline of not only Kemet, but also its regional rivals, such as the Kushites, Nubians, and others between the 7th and 10th centuries, which is the time period between 2181 and 2040 BC. For example, competition amongst the elite over the succession of the pharaoh leadership led these entities to invite foreigners such as the Asiatics to support their military efforts competing for pharaoh leadership. This is explained in further detail by Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, stating, "Since Lower Egypt also had internal strife amongst its now independent provinces, Delta chiefs did not hesitate in accepting invitations of black princes to form alliances and lead troops into Upper Egypt. Asians also marched across the desert from Libya, where they had replaced the indigenous black and were now the dominant population. Like their Libyan kinsmen, they always came in a manner that never caused immediate alarm. Small populations, small numbers spreading out, and then gradually forming separate communities next to an African village, town, or city. Then they became an integral part of life in the provinces, actively supporting local chiefs or monarchs, marrying into their families, and by doing so, in time, becoming legitimate chiefs themselves. The Asian power base was therefore firmly established in provinces so slowly, without fanfare, that it appeared to be an imperceptible development. The same changes had been taking place on the national level in some royal families. Because of these events, it led to a sharp decline of Kemetic regional dynasties in which they were not able to resolve their internal political issues. This gave inroads for the Asiatics to settle along the Mediterranean and Red Sea in Lower Egypt and play a key strategic role in the politics of the era. This will lead to the ultimate fall of Kemet once the Greeks and later the Roman empires conquered the declining power, and leads to the future subjugation of the Nubians and others in the region, who would submit to varying degrees of external rule near the end of the ancient period. The next example of these invasions is seen during the Middle Ages with the rise of Arab Islam in the 7th century. Founded by the Arab prophet Muhammad, after waging war against its own natives and conquering the area that's known as modern-day Saudi Arabia, Muhammad's army led the invasion of Egypt and successfully conquered it in 646 AD, which replaced the existing Greco-Roman colonial powers and became the new colonizers of Egypt. This led to the eventual conquest of northern Africa by the caliphates that succeeded Muhammad, stretching from Egypt all the way to Morocco, where the Arab rule is still in effect today. One of the consequences of this foreign invasion by the Arabs is coincided with the enslavement of native Africans by Arab Muslims who were captured in war or raised on native African tribes by Muslim armies, who were then sold into slavery through the Sahara and into the Arab world as a form of labor or emblems of high status by the enslavers. An example of this is stated with the Ba'akwat Treaty with Nubia, which Arabs demanded a tribute of annual African slaves, as explained in Bernard Lewis's Race and Slavery in the Middle East, stating, "Slaves sometimes formed part of the tribute required from vassal states beyond Islamic frontiers. The first such treaty ever made, that of the year 31 of the Hijra, which is 652 AD, with the Black King of Nubia, included an annual levy of slaves to be provided from Nubia. This may have been indeed the reason why Nubia was for a long time not conquered. The stipulated delivery of hundreds of male and female slaves, later supplemented by elephants, giraffes, and other wild beasts, continued at least until the 12th century, when it was disrupted by a series of bitter wars between the Muslim rulers of Egypt and Christian kings of Nubia. Similar agreements providing for the delivery of a tribute of slaves were imposed by early Arab conquerors on neighboring countries such as Iran and Central Asia, but were briefer in duration. Lastly, the most modern example of this foreign invasion is seen with the Western Europeans' conquest of Africa starting in the 16th century. This event was kickstarted by the Portuguese, Spanish, and others who began to master sea travel and launch expeditions and wars against Africa. Soon after, we see the introduction and evolution of the triangular Atlantic slave trade, where Europeans created the demand for enslaved Africans as free labor inputs for the newly established plantation systems based in the recently discovered New World of the Western Hemisphere. Over the next several centuries, the demand for African slaves and access to African raw materials led to numerous wars fought by competing European powers for their capitalist corporations to ensure access to these increasingly vital human and natural resources by aligning themselves on different sides of African internal conflicts. To cite one of many examples featuring the Portuguese from Philip Curtin's work, which he states, impressed by the Portuguese firearms, the 16th century Mweni Mutapa used the Portuguese as allies against their dynastic rivals and insubordinate regional chiefs, but the alliance was not stable. In 1561, overzealous Jesuits obtained a footing at the royal court and even contrived to baptize Mweni Mutapa and many of his relatives and counselors. In 1569, a new Portuguese king, Sebastian, sent 1,000 men to gain control of the gold mines, to see that they were properly exploited, to expel the Swahili native traders, and to secure safe access for Portuguese missionaries. In the end, the consequences of European invasion led not only to the enslavement, but also the dispossession of African lands and the formal colonization of the motherland over the succeeding decades, which has still lingering effects today in the neo-colonial era. Examples of which is seen with the artificial borders created by the colonizers, grouping and separating ethnic groups and replacing indigenous languages and religions with those of the colonizers such as English, French, or Judeo-Christian faiths through missionaries. As I wrap up today's video, I hope these historical examples that I provide underpins the core purpose of this channel and the efforts of the organization I'm building called the Original People's Party, which is to emphasize the importance of promoting African unity through the ideological objective of Pan-Africanism. More specifically, by either developing informal or formal political institutions or a formal political union or republic that will allow us to solve these internal disputes collectively and prevent divide and conquer tactics from foreign powers such as the Europeans or others, and to provide for the material and physical protection of all African peoples and become a powerful body that can become a geopolitical force to advocate for the interests of African peoples globally, including the diaspora. As we conclude today's video, don't forget to subscribe to OPP's mailing list to support our development work. And also, if you're a fan of boom bap beats, feel free to support my music and production by streaming and adding your favorite tracks and beats to your favorite playlist. Until next time, Abibi Fahudie, and blessings to the ancestors.